Hello to you, Yvonne and Jasmine. We have a very special connection time right now. The purpose of our being together is to go over this great transition that is happening, where the World as It Could Be program is going to come under your leadership, Yvonne, and the Initiative for Civility in Everyday Life, the nonprofit that you oversee. And we now have an opportunity to just go over how this has all come about and what we look forward to as a result of it. So people in our communities watching this will have a better sense of connection to being part of our continued efforts. And to that end, Jasmine is going to help guide our discussion. And let's get going.
All right, let's start with Sandy. So, what inspired the development of the curricula, programs, resources, the digital content, and the community building around the World as It Could Be?
Well, I think what's interesting is we are sitting 18 years from when we were in the heart of just getting ready to have a presentation by high school youth at both a nonprofit gathering and at Balboa High School. And that was 18 years ago. And what had inspired what came of that is the fact that at that time, my goal, and I was running the Rex Foundation, the charitable foundation started by the Grateful Dead, and I was trying to do something to raise awareness about the human rights framework to help explain why our grants were in such a broad realm of areas. And I had written a newsletter called Perspectives on Being Human, and I wanted to bring that to life. And I wanted to showcase some of our grantees and the work they were doing, especially in the arts, and I wanted to involve youth. And so what happened was I had the support, I had raised some funds and commissioned this original production that was being organized by the leaders of 3 arts-based nonprofits in the Bay Area. And this is all on our website, which we can link to when people see this. And we ended up calling this production The World as It Could Be, a Declaration of Human Rights, which came out of one of the adults looking at my newsletter, being part of the San Francisco Mime Truth, and saying, wow, I didn't know that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights existed, but it basically spells out the world as it could be. And so from September of 2006 to December 7th of 2006, 20 high school youth worked under the direction of these leaders of these 3 arts organizations. They learned about the UDHR. They used the techniques of these organizations around how to embody the ideas, and they put on really quite a meaningful production, particularly at Balboa High School in San Francisco. And it was both the process of creating this production and what happened during the production and the response to it that inspired what has led to today. Because what happened was none of the adults involved in this, all of whom, as Ellen said, I went to school, I'm a college graduate, I've read a lot, I had no idea about the Universal Declaration. The students were not learning about it, and yet when they did, they were extremely excited to have this framework that they said, wow, this is something we can get behind, this is something we can fight for. And I also saw that the arts played a critical role in helping the youth understand what these concepts were about more than just reading a document. And the fact that they had what really was like a rite of passage experience to be the teachers, to get in front of their adult community and peers in a high school, 1,200 kids, to be the teachers and showcase what they did. This was a transformational experience for them. And what happened was I realized, first of all, the arts were being cut in schools as part of our Rex Foundation goal to be a catalyst for positive change. I felt that the Universal Declaration offered a framework for supporting such positive change, and that we really needed to bring attention to it since nobody knew about it. And so then the people that were watching it, the teachers, it turned out we had Andrea McAvoy Spiro from the University of San Francisco was in the audience and watched it. And people came up and said, we have to do more about this. We need to follow this up. And that led to having some meetings with both a couple of funders, the principal and vice principal of Balboa High School, Andrea McAvoy Sparrow, Susan Katz from the University of San Francisco, and other interested parties, including Ellen Sebastian Chang and Sarah Kroll, who had done the production. We all agreed we needed to develop curriculum. And the curriculum needed to demonstrate how to teach about the Universal Declaration in a classroom environment, demonstrating the importance of the arts and providing youth with a rite of passage experience to give them the opportunity to be the teachers. And that's what led to the development of the curriculum. And we published it in 2010 after piloting the curriculum at, in fact, Arroyo High School, where I'll be going next week to watch their, I don't know, umpteenth town hall that these kids are doing on the Universal Declaration. And over time, what became clear is there was more to talk about, that we not only needed to be in the schools to educate youth who were supposed to learn about the UDHR, but the general public needed to be made or aware of it. And so that led to how can we post on social media? And Jasmine has been highly influential in really helping develop the communication style, the kind of graphics that can capture people's attention, and how to demonstrate that the principles of the Universal Declaration were relevant to everyday life, and how to use that framework as a way to say, this is how you can speak up to your government officials. You have the right to vote and participate in your government. So we were able to utilize the framework to help create messaging to inspire the greater population to be engaged. And being part of Human Rights Educators USA and NCSS gave us the opportunity to develop resources that could be utilized in those networks that helped us enrich the curriculum that we had. So that's what inspired us. It all started on this kind of day of December 8th when I thought this would be a great production. I'll get a DVD of it and I'll hand it off to a couple of people interested in using it, and that'll be that. But instead, here's what happened.
Great. Thank you for the 18-year recap. What factors contributed to the decision to find a new home for the world as it could be?
A few different things have taken place. In 2014, The World as It Could Be became part of a program of the Alameda County Deputy Sheriff's Activities League that's based in an unincorporated part of Alameda County. And what inspired that was the opportunity to create a after-school rite of passage program at a youth center that had just been built to serve an underserved community of youth. And that has been a wonderful connection. We also had anticipated and did make some inroad to bringing the ideas of the UDHR into the public safety world that was part of the Sheriff's Department of Alameda County. But over the last couple of years, some things happened in the nonprofit DSAL became subjected, quite frankly, to some political shenanigans in the Sheriff's Department. And it really caused a shift in what the focus of DSAL would be. And when that happened, I realized that there was not a good future for our work at DSAL, and that it was really time to figure out what to do next. And in addition to that, I felt that I have always actually wanted a home for The World as It Could Be. I had looked for a home almost from the first year out because I wasn't planning on taking on this kind of program when I was running the Rex Foundation. So it's really been in my mind for a long time. And I wanted to see the program continue without it relying on me. So it would have some type of long-term future. And uh, and that's really what prompted the fact that the sign of what was happening at DSAL meant this was the time to really make finding a home imperative.
Right. So speaking of finding a home, how are you and Yvonne connected?
Well, we actually have known each other. We've been on Zoom calls for the last, I think, 10 years at least, because we were both on the steering committee of Human Rights Educators USA, or HRE USA. And one of the people we both know is a woman named Nancy Flowers, who's actually the mother of human rights education and one of my heroes. I just think the world of Nancy and the work that she's done and how she looks at the world. And so I went to Nancy and explained what I just explained about why I was looking for a new home and asked her for some advice on where to go. And she said, I think you should talk to Yvonne. And so I did. I contacted Yvonne, who uh, very willingly said, yes, let's meet. And I explained to Yvonne what was going on. And she then said, yes, I'd like to be part of being the home for the world as it could be.
So, Sandy, why are you excited about transferring the world as it could be to Yvonne's leadership and becoming part of the initiative for civility in everyday life?
I'm excited on a number of levels. First of all, I deeply admire the work that Yvonne has been doing in her career around human rights education. When Nancy suggested we meet, I did look up Yvonne in more detail because I really had only known us from our Zoom interactions around HRE USA. And I was like, oh my God, look at this list of accomplishments over a career. And the fact that Yvonne not only was focused on youth development, but was deeply immersed in human rights education, actually, I think has a far wider, broader credential around human rights education than I will ever have. So her qualifications are outstanding. And the fact that what was really clear to me is that for the world as it could be to have continued robustness needs a champion. I've been its champion along with all the supporters, but it really just to have it be in some type of institution where it might be on the shelf as a tool, having somebody who really wants to champion utilizing the program means a great deal to my own idea of what the future of the program could be. And so the fact that Yvonne said, I want to have this program as part of what I do has meant a great deal to me. And I feel like the whole orientation of the initiative for civility in everyday life, it's really broad, and I hope the world as it could be will be another asset to helping carry out that work. But I'm very excited that the program is going to have such a bright future under Yvonne's guidance and the work that she's already doing.
So, Yvonne, how how did you become involved with human rights education, and what inspires you to end the work in this field?
Oh, well, first I have to say that Sandy's one of my heroes, and inspiring persons. So we're all in this together, and it's such a gift for us to be able to have the world as it could be and to see if we can give it a new home and build it on its wonderful foundation that it's already got. I don't know how to thank you enough. So how did I get into it, you ask? I think that children are products of their time, and I was a child of the 60s. And so I grew up with the civil rights movement and the women's movement, and I understood that this was a very important set of things to pursue. for instance, as a little girl, I remember looking at the newspaper on what do I want to be when I grow up, and they would have the help wanted ads, and that there was help wanted men, help wanted women, and the guys got all the good jobs, and the women had like these awful jobs that paid nothing, that was doing the dirty work. And I thought, I don't want to be like that. And my mom didn't work, because that was kind of culturally not acceptable where we were living in the Midwest. Um, in terms of segregation, it was supposed to be, I think, illegal, kind of. But at the time, I was in a theater group, and I remember we stopped at this one restaurant because we were all hungry, and we got thrown out of the restaurant because one of the members of our troupe was Black. They said that we could all go out and sit at the back picnic table, and he would serve the whites in the restaurant. And so we all left. But it was unthinkable that they would do this to our friend. Um, it was the time of the Vietnam War, and watching the students at Kent State get killed merely for protesting the war. Um, all of this was a shaping time, for a child. And of course, as Sandy pointed out, we weren't ever educated in human rights. I did not know about the UDHR. I knew nothing about that. And so I just grew up thinking that there must be a better way. And I had parents who were social activists to some degree. And so they had inspired that you had to treat other people right with the golden rule.
All right. I know you both from also the HRUSA work. I work with Sandy very closely. I'm looking forward to learning more about your work, Yvonne, and your background. So what is the focus of your teachings at Salem State, and how does that connect to the establishment of the Initiative for Civility in Everyday Life?
That's a great question. So I'm a sociologist, and I've been amazed at how the field never really dealt with children. And so I asked if I could create a center for child studies at my university. And they said yes, but they gave me no money, no space, and no staff. But they said, you go for it, girl. And so I did. And I built programs within the confines of the university. But they really didn't understand child rights, and the university does not teach human rights. I developed the first class for them, and none of my students have ever had a class in human rights. They may know about civil rights or women's rights or gay rights, but they have no idea about the larger framework. And I must say, I didn't either. All right, so I was asked to be on the U.S. policy chair for this organization of scholars in Cyprus called the Hope for Children CRC Policy Center. And so they're all a group of scholars from around the world doing child rights. Well, I didn't know about what all this rest of the world was doing. And I ended up with a fellowship to the EU and UK. And I saw human rights in action for the first time. And it was a life-changing event for me. For instance, as an example, I was on a train between Stockholm and Oslo, and there was a little boy, and he was melting down. It'd been a tough day, and he was in the aisle of the train, just having a very difficult time. And I saw his dad coming down to get him, and I thought, boy, he's going to hit that child. He's going to yell at him. And he didn't. He laid in the middle of the floor on his belly, talking like this with his son. And they talked, and in just a matter of minutes, they were holding hands, walking down to go get a snack at the train. All right, it was a totally different model. And I started watching what they were doing and became totally enthralled with this idea about why human rights in general was important, and why it was important, especially to focus on children, because somewhere that man had learned as a child how to be treated right. All right, and so I thought I would really pursue this. I've written 23 books and I've got a bunch more in process right now. And that's all well and good, but it's not advocacy in a tangible way. And what Sandy's program does is put it into the hands of people in real life, and to be a real advocate, an activist. And I think that is a really important thing. And that's what I would like to see. I don't know that all the things I've written changed the world, but I do think that this one-on-one contact with the students will.
That kind of comes into the next question. So what about the World as It Could Be program prompted your enthusiastic response about integrating the World as It Could Be into your initiatives?
I think that with the nonprofit on the Initiative for Civility in Everyday Life, trying to talk about how to make this world a more civil, better place. She already copped the good name on the World as It Could Be, so I had to pick something else. So with this, I developed a human rights education model because, again, I knew nothing about human rights education. And here I was to be the U.S. policy chair for child rights in the U.S., since the U.S. is the only country that hasn't ratified the CRC. And then what was I to do? How would I do this task? And human rights education seemed to be the way. And so I think that it is not just something that you give a module for in high school. I think it is a birth to death kind of experience, longitudinally. Most parents don't know how to parent in a rights respecting way. I had nice parents, but they didn't know. All right. And I didn't know when I had my children, and I wish I had known then what I know now about how to parent from a rights respecting perspective. I think the schools could be doing a wonderful job. I just came back from Wales on a fellowship, and we were in a school that was rights respecting. And the difference in climate and the way they interacted was so different and wonderful. All right. And I would like to see that happen here. But I think that under the initiative, another thing that I would like to do besides those things is to look at professions. I think that every profession needs to have people working in it that are trained in human rights. Police officers really need to know. Mental health counselors, substance abuse people, teachers, business people, the clerk at Walmart. Everybody needs to know how to be rights respecting, and they don't. And so I would like to see building these kind of programs and see if we could get these organizations to allow us to do this kind of training, around the importance of what the UDHR has to tell us in a tangible way.
Well, I think you kind of just answered this other question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So what ideas do you have for advancing the work of the World as It Could Be?
Yeah, I think that's it. All of those things. I think getting the word out. I've got a nice international community, and so I think that they would be excited about picking this up as well. So I think that we can grow it in terms of location and in terms of what population's getting the education on how we could certainly make the world a better place than I think it is today.
So what would you like the World as It Could Be to know about the program's transfer to the Initiative for Civility in Everyday Life?
Well, I looked at what I hope will happen. And as a summary, I think that human rights is part of every religion and faith and philosophy. They call it under the golden rule, but they're talking about kindness. They're talking about social justice. And I think that is fundamental to the way that I'm seeing what needs to happen and how I need to spend my time. I live right now in New Hampshire, and there's a big Shaker community, and the motto has been, hands to work and hearts to God. And so I think that you can talk about, the spiritual component and why you love one another and things, but you've got to work and you've got to do the pragmatic action. And so I think that this notion of how do we teach people human rights and the UDHR, the CRC, in a very tangible way that impacts everything that we do, every word that comes out of our mouth. And I think that looking at this whole notion of love, it's a verb, it's an action word. It doesn't matter how you feel if you don't act on it. And I think that we need this now more than ever. And for me, I think working with Sandy and working with Nancy and all of these wonderful people I'm meeting around the world who are doing human rights work, they are lifting us up, and they're helping me to find my best self. And I think I would like to help other people to find their best self, whatever that self is. So that's why I'm so excited to have this wonderful opportunity to work with you and Sandy and everyone else who has been a part of this wonderful 18-year legacy. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Sandy.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we close out?
Well, I would just like to say that I hope that just hearing Yvonne speak about her own vision for the world is an indicator of why I've made such a good decision about handing over the world as it could be to her leadership. And that I feel like, especially now, it's not an easy time in our country politically. I think people are looking at, what's in store for us when there's like the winds of saying we don't want inclusion and we don't want diversity and we don't even know how to deal with human rights. That having this opportunity to see the world as it could be, able to continue doing what it can as part of inspiring people to say this is what we can all fight for. It came out of the horrors of World War II, the UDHR. It came out of a very dark time in history, and yet it inspired people to create it as a framework for how the world could be. And so I feel so positive that now this work of 18 years is going to be able to continue and hopefully be part of inspiring people to be hopeful and engaged and working at making its words reality, no matter what the circumstances are.
And I think too that what you have created with your network is so important. And I would love to continue to work with your network and all of the people who have been inspirational and helpful and help build the world as a better place, because we can't do anything alone. And I certainly can't build it alone. And so as we go forward, we're still going to be holding hands and keeping each other going. So I hope that other people will continue to work with us as we grow it forward.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.